So I think that media and content is starting to cover the issue of murdered and missing Indigenous women a lot more. But one thing we don't really see on screen is the debate that you bring up in your film about like who should be raising Indigenous kids. And for the film, those issues kind of go hand in hand. Talk to me a little bit about the decision to include both of these very heavy topics.
Sure. Yeah. I think, as an Indigenous person living in Indigenous cultures, these sorts of topics are just always burning in the background.
Right.
My mom was a teacher in our community for 35 years. And just hearing her always kind of talk about these topics and kids moving in and out of her classroom and what ICWA means, how it's challenged, who's responsible for raising our kids. And then as a mixed race person with a white father, there was also always this fear in my family that he would try and get custody of my sister and I. It was a pretty bad divorce. My mom and my sister and I were in and out of DV shelters growing up. Mm-hmm. And there was kind of always this fear that my mom, who is this like small brown woman, wouldn't have power if it was challenged by a much more powerful like white man.
Right.
And so those themes are personal to me because I've grown up with them in and around my life. While this is not biographical in any way, there are, just pieces of truth that exist in all of these families. And so for me, I wanted to have a conversation around who is responsible for raising Native kids, who should be left in charge of their direction in life and where they grow up. And it's often not a black and white issue. We wanted that nuance to be present in the film where you could be like, well, maybe this person's not making the best choices and like, maybe it's not great to have, to teach the kid how to pickpocket or whatever. But at the end, the cultural connection and being grounded in who you are trumps most of those other small offenses. So, and also right now, there's an ICWA case that's being challenged in the Supreme Court, and most of that's being funded by big oil money because we know that they're just trying to chip away at our sovereignty in order to continue to, profit off of our lands and our nations. So I think it's just a timely conversation, not just in terms of the MMIR aspect of it, but also, they're going to make a ruling on this case soon, and it could really upend our sovereignty as Native nations.
You recognized pretty early how wonderful Lily Gladstone is. And I have a feeling in the next 2 years, she's gonna blow up. So talk to me about the magic of working with Lily, and she's so moving and mesmerizing to watch in this.
I remember watching Kelly Reichardt's Certain Women, and I was already blown away by the film in its first act. And then I saw Lily Gladstone's face on the screen, and I immediately recognized her as an Indigenous woman, even though Kelly so beautifully doesn't use that as like any sort of like storyline. Like Lily just exists as a woman in Montana, a ranch hand in Montana, and her face, she was able to say 1,000 words with one small glance, and I understood that character deeply before she even opened her mouth. And I was a nobody. I didn't have, any background or pedigree when it came to being a filmmaker. But when I had my short film, Little Chief, written, and I was in the Sundance Lab, I received her email address from Sterling Harjo, who was my mentor. And I reached out to her and sent her the script and said, would you please do this with me? And she was gracious enough, generous enough, and kind enough to come and shoot that film. And we just really enjoyed each other and enjoyed working with each other. And as we were wrapping the short film, I said, I have an idea for a feature and I would really love for you to be in it. So she's always been Jax. She's read many iterations of the script over the time we were developing it, and it's such a great relationship in that she is patient, generous, and kind, and shows up with this incredible energy. So there was never going to be anyone else to play Jax.
and Isabel Delroy Olsen just beautifully brings this like bright energy to kind of the foil of Lily's character. Talk to me about finding her.
Yeah, so we knew early on in development that we needed to find somebody who could challenge Lily's star power. We spent 2 years casting for Roki, and we met so many incredible young Indigenous actors across North America, but we hadn't quite found someone that we thought wouldn't maybe disappear behind Lily. I was working on an AMC show called Dark Winds, and there was a need for a young pregnant teenager. And she blew the audition away, but we all agreed that she looked too young. Like, we didn't want a 13-year-old pregnant girl. We wanted a 17-year-old pregnant girl. And I was like, but I'm looking for a 13-year-old. And I reached out to her reps, and she sent in an audition. And it was like, within 10 seconds of her audition, I saw that spark. She's feisty. She loves joking. She's not intimidated. And so I knew that she could shine alongside of Lily and not get lost. And they truly had so much fun with each other on set. And they were constantly playing jokes on each other and the crew. And I believed that they would go on a heist together.
Yeah, it's evident from the first scene. So no spoilers, but the film ends not where you expect it, but definitely where, like, as an audience member, I needed it to end where you ended it. Can you talk to me a little bit about that decision?
I had 2 things that I knew this movie would be. There was a conversation around the translations in Cayuga of mother and aunt, and that your mother's Knoha and your aunt is Knoha'a, which means little mother, your other mother. I had that image in a cornfield, and then I had the image of an aunt and a niece dancing with each other in the end, which maybe that's a spoiler. I don't know. Leave it out if it is.
No, I don't think it is. It's big enough.
And so the ending was an image in my mind, and so those were the 2 anchors of the entire film, and my co-writer, Michiana Elise, and I wrote the entire film to meet those 2 moments between these 2 characters. So it was the first thing that we knew, and we knew we needed to end it on a note of love and connection between these 2 powerful matriarchs.
I had the pleasure of meeting some of your crew on one of the Sundance buses. And actually on the way to the Fancy Dance premiere. And first of all, they were raving about how wonderful you are. And I knew this. You are also one of my favorite. You are responsible for one of my favorite episodes of television last year, which on Reservation Dogs, for the the retreat episode. Never laughed harder. So I learned through talking to your crew that about 70% of that crew are res dogs, are from the show. Talk to me a little bit about the decision to bring so many people on with you, and what that does when you are working on an indie film with little budget and little time.
Yeah, I had gone down and directed the roofing episode.
Yes.
I wrote the episode you just mentioned. I directed the roofing episode. It was the first episode of television that I directed, and I worked with just the best of the best that work in Oklahoma, and they're so hardworking, so creative, so generous. Many of them are Native, and when we got the green light for the project, I mean, we were always going to shoot in Oklahoma. Sterling and Res Dogs have built such a strong crew base there in Tulsa that we knew that would probably be the best place to go. Because of our limited budget, we knew that there would be so many local crew that would be talented, trained, all of those things. And, it was wonderful. They knew me. They apparently trusted me from having worked with me on the Res Dogs episode, and we just embarked on this multi-week journey through a COVID spike and one of the wildest heat waves I've ever experienced in Oklahoma. And we just showed up every day, supporting each other, collaborating, and truly the film, we had lanyards made on the first day. We'd worked with some elders to, because our language has essentially been stunted for 80 years because there aren't many speakers. And so we worked with elders and my language consultant, Kisa, to come up with the Cayuga words for the roll calls, like action, cut, sound speeding. And the first couple of days, everyone would be looking down at the lanyards. And by the third day, we were calling all of the calls in Cayuga. And so it just felt like such a community coming together. Yeah. And we were thinking of all these themes and topics and not only having them be on the screen, but as part of the production culture itself.
At the Q&A, you got emotional talking about, I believe it was Roki. And that just proves to me that you care so deeply about your characters, which I think is such a rare thing. I think sometimes people don't, or directors don't always, not that they don't care, but not to that level. And so how does that come about? How does that manifest? Is that in the writing? Did you, like, as soon as you thought of an aunt and a niece dancing in a field, did that, like, connection come?
I've been crying a lot. Not I'm an emotional person, and I think many creatives are. I think sometimes in this industry there's this, especially when you're a director, there's this really kind of corrupt and warped hierarchical way that movies get made. And there's almost this, like, tendency for directors to have to detach themselves from other things in order to, like, be a boss, or some choose to yell at people, some choose to manipulate, some choose to not talk to anyone because it's overwhelming to be responsible for so many people. And a lot of what I've witnessed coming up through production is just, like, not very healthy. For me, I just knew that these topics were so personal, not only to myself, but so many people who were working on the film, that I needed to, in some ways, not lead by example, but I knew if I was shoving everything deep down inside, that I wouldn't be able to empathize or understand other people that may need space to cry or to have, let me take 10 minutes to go and recuperate. And so we cried every day. We laughed every day. We shared our emotions together every day. And I think it truly was a connection of all of us on this mission. And Isabel put it so succinctly when we were going on our press junkets the other day. Like, we care so deeply for Jax and for Roki because they symbolize our mothers, our sisters, our nieces, our children. Mm-hmm. And when we saw them in pain, we felt that pain very deeply. And when we felt them laugh and have joy, we felt that so deeply. And so, on the Q&A stage, I feel defensive of them. I feel protective of them. Absolutely. And I want to share their joy with the world.
You're their mother in a way. You birthed them.
Other mother. Yeah. And so for me, it's also, I think, I was so nervous. Like, no one prepares you emotionally for this job. And part of me on all of these conversations and communications is, again, like, I don't want to mask anything in the hopes of seeming strong or seeming professional or whatever, because for me, art is emotion and an expression of emotion and feeling. And if I'm unable to honestly communicate with press or with other people, what's the point? Yeah. Like, what's the point of doing this? And so it couldn't be from a more authentic place. So why like make it inauthentic?
I mean, it just comes off as such a labor of love. But and I hate using the word labor because there's that, like, negative work connotation to it. But just such a act of love. And I can't talk about how much I love this film enough. So thank you so much for talking with me. I really, really appreciate
thank you. And I also just want to say thank you as a I'm assuming, I don't know if she, her pronouns.
Yeah, she, her, they, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as a woman working in yours, like, it's been also really breathtaking to have women reviewing the film. There's a difference. And there needs to be more of you doing what you're doing too. So I'm really appreciative of your work as well.
I mean, I was telling Wes in the hallway that, like, I felt like I haven't seen a lot of reviews for this, and I'm kind of a little bit peeved about it, because this should be like one of the most talked about films of the festival, and I don't understand why it's not.
Yeah.
So.
Well, hopefully we've got some more trades coming out soon. She's shaking her head yes.
Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what we're laying down, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest stuff. Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what we're laying down, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest stuff.